I need you to hate so I can use you for your energy.
This is real sales talk. Real sales advice from real sales practitioners. Giving you tips on how to dominate your sales quota are your co-hosts, Sean Mitchell and Phil Keene. What's going on, everyone? It's Sean Mitchell. We have Phil Keene as well, and we are rocking and rolling with another episode of Real Sales Talk. This is Season 7, Episode 8, and we have Michael Pedone as our special guest to talk about prospecting and the right questions to ask to qualify those prospects. So, Michael, welcome to Real Sales Talk.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for being willing and flexible to nail down a date here. Excited to dive into this. I want to give you the chance to kind of introduce yourself. You run a company called SalesBuzz.com, which is an online sales training platform. Tell us a little bit about how that got started and what you're doing today.
Yeah, sure. So what I do is I train inside sales teams all around the world. Basically, I help them overcome their call reluctance that they have, their fear of picking up the phone, especially with a lot of the noise that's out there today. You know, you have one side saying cold calling is dead. They'll have another side saying, no, it isn't. Listen, I'm a big believer in using everything you can to have warm leads. But at the end of the day, whether you have to pick up the phone, do outbound prospecting, or if you have warm leads coming in, you have to know what to say, when to say it, why to say it, and how to say it. And as a straight commission sales rep for over 20 years myself, I developed a strategic process that if you just follow this simple plan, there won't be any more call reluctance. You'll start having more conversations, and you'll be able to determine real quickly, and the prospect will be able to determine, hey, should we continue more conversations to solve something here? And that's really what we want to do. We as salespeople, we want to be able to go ahead and find the right people that we can help make their lives better than when we found them. And if you know how to ask the right questions and when to ask them for the right reasons, you start making a lot more money because you're helping a lot more people get what they want.
Awesome. This is great. And so you're doing online trainings, you're doing webinars. What are some of the other things that your company is doing to date?
Yeah, so the things, when I first got started in this, first of all, I built and sold a company prior to this. It was a marketing company. And that was back in 2007. I started in the middle of the dot-com bomb, actually, if you guys remember that, right? And I had no business starting a company because I barely graduated high school, let alone going to college. It was just a family situation that I was in. So it was a really rough upbringing and whatnot. And sales was a lifeline for me, to be quite frank, because I had big dreams, but I came from a really poor background. And, the better you got at selling and helping people get what they want, the more money you made. So as I got into sales and started doing well, one day I had this idea to start my own company. Again, no real background how to do so, but I'm very determined, got the right people on board to help me. And with my sales skills, even though in the dot-com era, when a lot of companies were failing, I was still able to be very successful because I knew how to sell. I was following my same process. So anyway, so I started a company. Within 5 years, it was a marketing company. Within 5 years, somebody came in and made me a 7-figure cash offer for the company. So obviously I took that, especially with the background I just told you I had. And so then I got all this cash, and I'm like, what do I want to do next? And I was really passionate. I was like, I know what it feels like to have that phone feel like a 25-pound weight and you just don't want to pick it up anymore. I know what that's like. I know the mistakes I was making that led to that feeling, and I know what I did differently to avoid that from happening and to have a better positive result. And so what I was going to do is I was going to look into actually buying maybe like a sales training franchise. You got Sandler, which is a franchise. You got the Dale Carnegie's who are a franchise, and they're all great stuff in their own right. But I didn't like the business model that I would have to charge really high fees to cover the overhead because I could only train certain people that were willing to drive to the sessions. And, Gittimer's a friend of mine. He's great too, and he travels all around the world. And you have Brian Tracy's that travel all around the world and do their sales training that way. It's like, I want to be around my kids. I don't want to do that. So what else could I do? And I was like, you know what? Let me do online sales training. And that's really what got me going to this. I really built the company based on how I wanted to live my life. And I just thought it would be better to be able to have people all around the world be able to log in, get the training right away without the expense of traveling, and then be able to get right on the phone after that 1 hour session is done and try it and see that it works. And now next thing you know, they're using it all week. So they're building their confidence, they're getting results, and then the next week they'll come back and take the next session. And that's really what we do. So that's kind of, the condensed version of how we really got into this.
So let's slow down and talk a little bit deeper. So you talk about call reluctance, you talk about your psyche of having a 25-pound phone that you're trying to pick up every time. Why does that happen in most scenarios?
It happens because salespeople don't know how to sell. That's the real bottom line. They've never been taught a strategic step-by-step option. You go to any kind of sales training, a lot of times it's going to be, and this is not a knock on some of the other stuff, but a lot of times it's more just theory, or like the whole article that you brought up that you wanted to talk about that I wrote about a couple of years ago, the best sales prospecting questions, right? When I saw somebody come out with an article about here are the top prospecting questions, I was excited. Hey, because I'm always wanting to learn. I'm always looking to learn and be better. I went to read it and I started seeing these questions. I'm like, first of all, these questions have been around forever. This is the same bad advice I got when I got into sales 20 years ago and I was struggling at it. And one of the big things that is missing is when people learn, they're teaching like sales techniques or questions to ask, they're not teaching them why they should be asking. So some questions could be really good that were on that list that you guys were referring to, but if you don't teach a salesperson of when to use that question and in what scenario and why to use it, they could take some really good questions, get on the phone, use them in the improper scenario, and get bad results and go, well, the training didn't work or the questions didn't work. The salespeople have to know what to ask, when to ask, why to ask it, and how to ask it. That's the big.
So interesting. So I think every time I ever led a sales training or watch somebody give a sales training, it seems like somebody in the audience immediately goes to, I want to know about objections. I want to know what question I should ask when, what's my silver bullet, or they want the answer, the physical answer. So if we have the chance to get there, let's get there. But honestly, there's no silver bullets that exist, so it's hard to get to there. So talk about that. So how do you start identifying when to ask questions or what type of question to ask in what order? I mean, what's your psyche look like as you start having that conversation internally as you're having a sales call?
So one of the things is what I was taught early on in sales when I started to really be successful. I started learning from a bunch of other people and interviewing what they were doing. And then what I ended up finding out is, yes, you would get some salespeople that would just hit it out of the park. They're top salespeople, and I'd want to learn from them. But what I found is they just had intuition. They didn't know why they were really good. They were just really good. So what ended up happening is when I was failing at selling, instead of going, what do I ask to overcome that? I started asking, what do I do to avoid that situation from happening? You follow me? So what I did is I ended up getting this step-by-step process that would avoid a lot of the objections from coming up to begin with. And that's what I will tell somebody if I'm doing a live training class. Like, I keep getting in this objection. I'm like, okay, do you want a magic bullet to try to solve that or to handle it when it comes up? Or would you rather just not have that come up? Would you rather at least eliminate it from coming up at least 90% of the time? And then if you want that, it's going to take a little more patience. You're going to have to learn a few steps ahead of time to avoid that. I look at sales a lot like the game of chess or even checkers. I mean, the chess or checkers, you can see all the potential moves the other side can make before they make them. And now I'm not saying you should look at your prospects as opponents, right? Don't go too deep in that. But what I am saying is this. You can see all the potential moves ahead of time, and you can influence how they move based on what you say, so you're more proactive rather than reactive. Does that make any sense?
It does, absolutely. And I'd like you to articulate that. Can you give a scenario in which you would be thinking, okay, what questions do I ask now to avoid this scenario a little bit down the line? Unpack that a little bit more, because I think that there's some really great gold in there for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just start with the very beginning before you even start having the conversation, right? If you're making outbound calls, one of the biggest obstacles that I hear from sales reps is like, well, I can't get anybody on the phone who wants to talk to me, right? I just keep hearing things like, no thanks, not interested, we're all set, we already have somebody that does that, we're under contract. So they're not even getting what I call a first base, right? I'll use a baseball analogy. Now, I see your sign behind you. You miss 100% of shots you don't take by Wayne Gretzky. I'm wearing a Shattuck St. Mary's hat right now. If you know who that is. Right, that's where my kid goes. I'm huge into hockey, but let's go back into baseball. A lot of salespeople can't even get to first base, meaning they're getting blown out of the gate right out of the beginning. So they go, well, how do I overcome that objection? of, no thanks, aren't sure we're all set. I'm like, well, it's not that you need to overcome it, because you're going to get exhausted if you're always trying to overcome that on every call. The key is to avoid it from happening to begin with. And a lot of salespeople go, well, you can't do that. I go, okay, well, watch this. So let me give you a real world example. Let's just take myself, for example. A standard call for a sales call, me prospecting somebody, if I was going to do it the way most people would do it, incorrectly, I would say, is I'm going to call you, I'm going to get a prospect on the phone, and I'm going to do some kind of introduction, and I'm going to say, we provide blah, 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 and I'd like to get on your calendar next week, and then I might even do the either or close, right? Is next Tuesday or Thursday good for you? Or is this time or that time good for you? And that's when they'll get the objection. Is that fair? We hear those kind of calls all day long. Right? So what I would do is this, to say, you have to know what pain points and problems is your targeted audience going to have if they're going to be interested in wanting to talk to you. They might not necessarily recognize their problem right out of the gate, but it's underneath it could be underneath the surface level as well. So let me give you the correct way. Let's say I did my research. I'm fine researching on LinkedIn or whatever, right? I identify a list of key target audience. They're in the right industry, right country, right company size. They have the right title. I know I could start with them, right? So I at least do my pre-homework. Now I have my list. I'm ready to call. I get you on the phone. I could just say, hi, this is Michael Pedone with SalesBuzz. Listen, the reason for my call is there's a possibility I may be able to help your sales team overcome call reluctance, but I would need to ask you a few quick questions first to be sure. Would that be okay? Now, if I'm getting a hold of a director of sales, a VP of sales, and they're managing 20 sales reps or more, or 5 sales reps or more, and they're not picking up the phones because the manager knows or the director knows that they're struggling with call reluctance, chances are I just bought myself 5 seconds. I'm not hearing no thanks, understood, we're all set. I mean, who would say no to that if they're dealing with that problem? So that's the key. You guys follow me here or no?
Absolutely. Yep.
Let me do it the other way. Hey, hi, yes, this is Michael Pedone with SalesBuzz, and we provide sales training. I'd just like to, set up a meeting to have a conversation. We see if we can help you next week. You're going to say, yeah, no, I think we're all good. But when I do the opening value statement where I use a pain point that they're going to have, they're going to see the what's in it for them. I just dramatically increased them to be at least curious to go and give me another 5 seconds on that call. Yeah. And that's all I need.
That's great. So where does that sales rep start? How do they identify those pain points? A seasoned sales rep's going to know just because they've been in the seat and they've worked with customers and understood the common pain points of that industry or vertical. Let's say you're breaking into a new industry or a new vertical. You really have no clue. How do you identify some of those things that are hot buttons?
Okay, so every business is only in business because they solve specific problems that their target audience is going to have, right? Now, there's going to be some salespeople that are going to listen to this and go, well, yeah, but we provide 10,000 different types of solutions, right? Okay, well, great. Each one of those solutions, though, was designed for a particular type of audience or problem to solve. And so what you have to do is find out which problems you want to help solve, and then you go out and find the prospects that are the characteristics that will match that. So when I'm building a list, for example, I know based on the history of the company so far that I'm going to look for companies in a certain area, certain vertical, certain employees, certain annual revenue, just the basics. I mean, everybody should be able to know what those basics are, and then make that list. And now they might not have a problem right now. Maybe they do, but they match the criteria that my other past best clients have. And so now that I have my list, that's when I create my opening value statement. Okay, if they're in this industry and they have this many employees, this revenue, chances are they're going to have these issues because they're pre-qualified suspects, right? So now I know I can agitate a pain or scratch an itch when I call them.
Awesome. So let's say you identify a pain or something hits home. So they say, let's use you as an example. Hey, your team's not getting on the phone at all. Does this resonate with you? Yes. Okay, great. So what's your follow-up question to that? Where do you go? Where do you take that conversation immediately?
Okay, so here's where it's different. So the first thing, my opening value statement, I have to do 2 things. I got to pique interest and then gain permission to continue the call. See, a lot of salespeople were taught to establish control right away. So even before we get to the questions, they're taught to establish control right away and ask a question. And the problem with that is prospects are so conditioned to that. It's not the 1970s or 80s anymore, right? They know that they're trying to be controlled in that area, so they're going to be resistant. That's where you'll start getting those short one-word answers because their guard is still up. So I do this thing. I flip it around. I do this thing where I'm going to create an opening value statement that'll first pique interest, and then when I gain permission, when I go, and if I caught you at a good time, I'd like to ask you a few questions just to see if what we have to offer maybe is some help to you. Would that be okay? And they go, well, yeah, sure, I got a second, go ahead. They just gave me permission to continue the call. And so now I know what my next question is going to be before I even picked up the phone. I want to engage with them. I want to put their attention in a specific area that I need them thinking about. And so instead of just asking a yes or no question, I'm going to ask them a question related to whatever it is I'm selling, but not talk about the solution. I'm just going to ask what I call an engagement or an entrance point question, and then it'll open them up. So for example, for me, I might ask you as an example, if you just gave me permission to continue the call after I mentioned we help VPs with sales overcome call reluctance, you go, yeah, I got a second, go ahead. Well, let me ask this, your sales team, are they using the phone to set face-to-face appointments, or are they doing everything over the phone? See, I don't care how they answer, but they're going to engage with me. They give me an answer. We're having a conversation now. And it's not about the weather. It wasn't, trying to build false rapport or anything. They're giving me something, an answer, and we're focusing on an area that I wanted them thinking about. And now that first question did what it was supposed to do. We got a conversation started, and it's focused in the area. And then I have 4 more questions lined up right after that have specific reasons. But that's just to give you a small example. This is the kind of stuff I'll teach salespeople. So now they go, well, I can do this. And they can customize it to what they want. Now that they're taking the guesswork out of it. I'm giving them a detailed plan of why you're asking each question. And each question has a purpose.
So I feel like I might know where you're heading with this, but I want to know that the answer is similar to the way I'm thinking. So one thing I really want to make sure that we slow down and make sure the Real Sales Talk family hears is you're not talking about sales buzz until I ask you what it is. So I think that's a key takeaway is you're really not pushing your product, and I'm assuming until that VP of sales on the other end of the phone says, all right, you got me. What do you do? Or when do you introduce your company in that cold call?
Yeah, so it doesn't even come up because the fact of it doesn't come up in the way because I'm more focused on their pain points and their process. So one of the first steps I have to get after I get past the opener is I want to establish problem recognition. I want to identify, does a problem exist that they have that I can help solve? Because I can't call them and tell them they have a problem because they're going to doubt it, right? So the best way I do is I know I have a very specific series of questions I teach that by the time they're done answering and having within a minute to a minute and a half, they're going to recognize and I'm going to be able to see, does a problem exist in an area that I can help solve? And the beauty of it is this, if they do have a problem and they recognize it based on their own answers, guess what human interest is next? They want to know how to solve it. So now the conversation is they're open to hearing what I do. So it just naturally leads there. And if there is no problem for me to solve, I learned a long time ago that you're not going to achieve the level of success in sales if you're pushing a product or a service on somebody just to hit your numbers if they don't have a problem. You're better off bailing on that call. So within 2 minutes or less, I had a conversation. Did we find a problem? We did. Great. We can go to the next step. If we didn't, I plant a seed and I bail out of that call, and then I let drip marketing take over in case they have a problem down the road I can help them with.
Yeah, another key takeaway for the Real Sales Talk family is you said 2 minutes or less. Where I see a lot of people on these calls is they'll get into the dialogue and it's 15 minutes, half hour, 45 minutes, and they're having these really long diatribes about everything under the sun, and you're not solving for the home run. If we're going to use a baseball analogy, we're not solving for the home run today. We just need a single. We just need you to get on the phone and have a conversation with us again because I've qualified you enough, and get off the phone. Like do stage 1 first and move on to the next step. So that's a really key takeaway I want to make sure people are hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the beauty of this too is and for newer sales reps, but make sure you understand, we're not saying, okay, you got to first base, but if you can round the second on that call, you don't hang up and wait till later to get to it. I mean, if you can take that call to second base or third base or a home run as well in that first call, go ahead. But it's at least what you're not trying to do is go from first to third. I mean, even if you hit a home run, right, and taking the baseball analogy, you still have to touch all the bases. So what I say is even if you get a warm, inbound, hot prospect, right, you still want to follow the process I teach, because the last thing you want is a warm inbound lead and you assume they know what problem recognition is. You assume they're the decision maker because they're asking the questions. You give all the information and then they never buy from you, and then you never get them on the phone again. Why? Because you skip steps or you skip bases. You don't want to do that. You still want to touch all the bases.
Absolutely. That's a great call out.
So you've mentioned a few times about these series of questions that you know you're going to ask. So my phone thought I was calling for Siri. You've talked about this series of questions. What are those questions that you can talk to, and how do you coach reps to be comfortable with those questions when they get in that real life scenario?
Right. Yeah. So the thing is, it's a formula. It's not necessarily, the questions can be customized to each industry or whatever it is that you sell. So it's not so much the questions, it's the reason for the question. So it's the step-by-step process that I teach. There's a reason why it's an 8-week course, right? We wouldn't be able to cram it all into this one section. But with that being said, what I'm doing online when I'm teaching these classes once a week is we're teaching them the reason why to ask it and how to ask it. And then we'll give examples. Then I'll even let them try it as well. They can create their own, and then I'll give instant feedback on it to tweak it or not. And that's the whole thing that you want to be able to get to, is to where the salesperson can go anywhere they sell and know this is the formula. This is the sales process that I'm going to have to ask this question in this moment for this reason. And then once I get my answer, I'm going to go to the next one.
So do you work with sales reps to role play? I mean, is that something that you do to get sales reps comfortable with those questions?
So there's a couple things. So role playing was a key element for me it really speeded up my ability to be successful in selling. If you're not, listen, the one thing that salespeople hate more than cold calling, the only thing they hate more than cold calling is role playing.
Totally.
They get so uncomfortable with it. They don't want to be wrong in front of their peers. They don't want their egos bruised. Get your ego bruised, right? So the role playing thing should be where you're not being criticized, you're being critiqued. Okay, so that's a real big key point. And I was listening to one of Tony Robbins' podcasts recently, and he's talking about if you're not growing, you're dying. And I think for salespeople, some salespeople have such high egos, but they're so fragile at the same time that they want to be the best salesperson in the company, but they're threatened if anybody gives them advice. So you really want to be open to get outside of that comfort zone. That's where your growth is. That's where you're going to make more money. And role playing is a key element. And you know what? If you happen to be at the highest level of sales of a sales rep, role play anyway and give back. Because one, it'll keep you sharp, but you also want to help the other sales reps that are up and coming. But the only thing I would say though is this. I mean, the rule number one in training: never help somebody that doesn't want it. So
Yeah.
Only the people that want to learn from you, make sure you spend time role playing if you're at that high level already.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too, because I think this is a really great point, and I see that resistance a lot with sales reps. Better for you to look like a fool in front of your peers than an actual customer.
Yeah, for sure.
And the way that I think about it is these are like free throws. This is like your free throw practice. You're in the gym. This is practice time. It may be mundane, but it keeps you fresh for when you do get under the spotlight. And we're using sports terminology here. When there's 3 seconds left, you're at the foul line, and these are the game-winning free throws. It should be natural and effortless to go through that motion.
The only aspect I would put on that is that you have to make sure that you are role-playing the correct techniques. So the last thing you want to do is practice and reinforce bad sales habits or sales techniques. I mean, if we're going back to sports analogy, you look at Shaq. He would practice his free throws all the time, and he was horrible at them because he was practicing incorrectly, right? You take Jordan, who practices them the right way, or Gretzky, who's practicing the shots. They do it right, and then they're top scorers. So you make sure you're not practicing the wrong bad habits.
Yeah, it goes back to my favorite sales/sports analogy, which is champions practice in private. It's a Magic Johnson quote. Look it up.
Nice.
It is absolutely my favorite. Like, you should be in private practicing the thing, so when you go on court, you don't look like a fool. And that could be everything from your point of just leading in the conversation, getting conversation started, the types of questions you ask them, how you articulate them, the pain points that typically exist. You can practice all of that. And if you look at the people that are really good at sales, they've done it tens of thousands of times, and they're experts at it. So they sound smooth, but they're still practicing almost all the time, or they're on enough calls that they're constantly staying sharp. That's why they are who they are and why they're so good at what they're doing. So for anybody that's listening to this, it's in the Real Sales Talk family, and you just started sales and you feel like you're getting your bumps and your bruises, it's okay. You're going to get there. Just got to practice and slow down. So,
well, you know what the funny thing you just mentioned, it reminds me of too, is a lot of salespeople are so against sales scripts. And the thing is this, you have to understand something. Every Oscar-winning actor read from a script, but they made it their own. So I'm going to agree that there's a lot of bad sales scripts out there, or they're written with the old sales style playbook that's no longer valid. But that doesn't mean all sales scripts are bad. I mean, you have to have a playbook. You have to know what you're going to say for the first time when you call and you get the gatekeeper, or you get voicemail, or if you get the prospect on the phone, right? I mean, how many times you as a sales rep you called? This is for the people listening in. How many times have you called and the prospect or the decision maker actually answered the phone and you go, "Oh, I didn't expect to get you," and it threw you off your game for a second?
Yeah.
That should never happen. You should be prepared. That's how I prepare for calls. When I teach being prepared, pre-call planning, it's to know that before I pick up that phone, I'm either going to get gatekeeper, voicemail, or prospect, and no matter which one I get, I know exactly how to handle it. When you get to that level, and that's why I do the training the way I do, I'm going to teach you how to do that, because you will no longer have call reluctance. Now the fear of phone is gone. And for those of you who say, "No, I don't want a script," well, if you're making, let's just say you're making $100 a week, right? Are you going to say 100 different things every time you get somebody on the phone? No, it wouldn't make no sense, right? So you have to know what works, but you have to find what works, and to do that, you have to know what the objectives are, and that's really what we teach them on this process.
So I want to ask one more question, and I think we're getting close to the end here. What's your advice to sales reps for that practice in that role play? I mean, do you recommend them turning on a video camera and getting in front of it? Do you recommend doing an audio recording? How can they do this outside of attending a training or a webinar by SalesBuzz? How do they get this like down packed so that it is just second nature and natural to them?
Well, so the first thing is there's no real right or wrong way to do the role playing, but I can give some tips on that. So the first thing is this, is record your sales calls if possible. If you legally can do it, record your sales calls, because let me just to share a story with you. Early in my sales career, I had this mentor who was taking me under his wing. He was a top sales rep there. I'm a big believer, always learn from those who have already achieved what it is you're after, right? So he was a top sales rep there. I wanted to learn from him, and I took a couple of role-playing sessions. I came in early, worked with them, got on the phones. My numbers didn't go up. I came back. I said, "See, it doesn't work," right? I was that guy, and I hate that guy, but I was that guy for a second. And he goes, "Well, you didn't say exactly what I said." I go, "Yes, I did." He replays the recording back that I had, and I changed a little word here or there. The inflection was just off a little bit. And I go, "See, I said what you say." He goes, "No, you change it. It's not what you say, it's what you say and how you say it." So the whole point is, if you're having a recording, you can't hide from that. It'll be very evident. If you can't record your calls, then role play. But everybody has a smartphone now. You can record the role playing and then listen back to it. I do this with voicemails for people who are trying to get callbacks on voicemails. I'll teach them what to say, but then you have to do your part. Record yourself leaving a voicemail, then listen to it. Would you call that back? And if not, you can quickly fix it yourself. You can speed up the process just by having a recording and listening to it, and how you sound, you can tweak it. So you can do that in a role-playing session, or you could do it on your own. But recordings is a big deal, and listening it back.
Awesome. Michael, I am loving what I'm hearing right now. Hopefully our listeners are as well. So if they want to hear more from you, how do they do that?
SalesBuzz.com has I put out a blog. I got a lot of great content on there. It's free. For now, you can go ahead and take a look at it. You can sign up for our newsletter. And of course, if you ever want to reach out to me, there's ways to do that on the website at salesbuzz.com as well.
Great. So we appreciate you coming on. We are going to jump into rapid fire, and it is going to be exclusive content for everybody that's listening on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever your audio podcast medium of choice is. Switch over to YouTube and catch the exclusive quick rapid fire questions with Michael. So Michael, we're going to jump into it.
Hit me.
All right. So when do you work best? Is it morning or night?
Well, so I'm an entrepreneur, right? I've started and built and sold companies before, so I'm kind of like on 24/7. A lot of my great ideas will come at 11 o'clock at night when everybody's going to bed, and I can just be up for 2 or 3 hours. Now, if I'm going with sales, the most important time for sales for me is between 7 a.m. and noon. If you really structure your day right, you can get a ton of your stuff done by noon. And that's when I also have the most energy. I think that's when most people have the most energy. Plus, if you manage your day right and you make your first time outbound calls before noon, you give yourself an opportunity for some of those callbacks in the afternoon, so you can go ahead and shorten that sales cycle and get some conversations in the afternoon going.
Awesome. Great advice. Second question. So, who is the best sales leader that you know that nobody else knows about right now?
I'm going to have to say it was one of my sales managers. His name is Kit Jarapet. He was a sales manager of mine over at DuPont Registry. Excuse me. So he really took me under his wing, and he really brought out a lot of the stuff inside of me that I had naturally, but he really helped push me to that next level. And I would have to say it was him.
Great. That's awesome. All right. Last rapid fire question, and then we'll wrap up. So what is the biggest mistake being made today by sales professionals?
Listening to all the noise out there that this is dead or that doesn't work. A lot of sales reps are looking for an easy button. And I think that, yes, I think one of the benefits of the millennial generation is they want things to be more proficient and faster and shorter, right? That's a really good thing. Excuse me. The one thing that's a problem, though, is that they're kind of like not doing the work to get there. I'm okay if we can get the right results and make it shorter, but the work's going to have to get put in. Their numbers are going to go through the roof when they pick up the phone and they do it the right way.
I absolutely agree. So I appreciate it. It has been an absolute pleasure. So again, one more time, where can we find you? What's the best way to get in touch with you? How do you connect with you and maybe have a conversation one-to-one?
Yeah, salesbuzz.com is the best way to go. You can book a one-on-one call with me right there at no charge, to see if I'm a good fit for your team. Or you can sign up for our newsletter, and you can I got a frog in my throat all of a sudden. That's not good for sales. Hold on a second. Yeah, but salesbuzz.com is the best way to go.
Great. So we'll hopefully the Real Sales Talk family will look you up on salesbuzz.com. We absolutely appreciate you coming on today.
Awesome. Take care, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael.
Later, Real Sales Talk family, and we'll catch you on the next one.